Watching Capital City Sunday.
Welcome back. I'm joined now by Mandela Barnes, the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So you and Tony Evers, your running mate, are out with a new plan called Government for Us Agenda. Tell me a little bit about it. It was released on Monday.
Yep, so the problem is many people feel like government has not been for them, and quite frankly, that has been the case. So we just want to restore a little bit of order in the force, so to say. That means that government should be accessible. That means that automatic voter registration, people should be able to be active in the process as easy as possible. And there also should be a lot of accountability, and that's why Tony's talked about the Office of Inspector General, which would be an independent watchdog to make sure that our tax dollars are used as they should be, reforming the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to go back to a model that has more accountability as well as the Department of Commerce, as that model as it worked for us. WIDA has been a failure on many different levels, and also making sure that we have nonpartisan redistricting. As we see, we have a very extreme form of government right now because our representatives pick their voters, not the other way around. That's a real problem.
Now, let's break down some of those. Creating an Inspector General. Why do you think Inspector General is needed in the state of Wisconsin?
We just want to restore trust back in the state of Wisconsin government. There's been a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse that's been going on. You look at road projects that have been double billed. We can go back to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and loans that they've lost. We need someone who can step in, who can be an independent voice, regardless of what political party made the mess. Someone needs to clean it up. Do
you know how large you want this office to be? How much maybe an Inspector General will cost?
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, if we look at the cost of that office, it will pale in comparison to the cost of money that's being wasted.
Now, you say wasteful spending. What's being wasted right now?
Well, again, I mean, you look at road projects. There was just a report that was released that showed that the state was being double billed for some road projects. And also, I mean, you look at a deal like Foxconn, something that should absolutely be renegotiated. We need somebody who can step in, an independent authority, to say enough is enough. This is not the way that we should go.
And also on this agenda, you want to prevent the use of non-disclosure agreements. It was recently revealed that the Attorney General, Brad Schimmel, had required all of his employees to sign these. Why eliminate those?
It should be a more public process. We want to get rid of the secretive non-disclosure agreements. We want to make sure that if that is the case, people should know about it. It should be a very open process, and people should know what could potentially be hidden. Because again, we look at you as a reporter. I mean, open records requests, FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. We want to make sure that government is once again open and accessible to the people.
And you've mentioned a few times getting eliminated WEDC, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Mm-hmm. Without that, you guys are looking to going back to the Commerce Department. Mm-hmm. Why is that? What is I guess your beef with WEDC?
WEDC has shown irresponsibility over the years. You look at the mishandling of loans. You look at the guy who got a Maserati. There's so many extreme examples of WEDC's failure. And when there was nothing wrong with the Department of Commerce model, sure, there were areas for improvement, but again, it goes back to accountability. WEDC is a quasi-governmental authority. It's supposed to be a public-private partnership, but all the money has been public, but the interests have all been private. We need to make sure that Wisconsin taxpayers are getting the most bang for their buck. We need to make sure that we are actually investing in small business. Once again, we've been ranked dead last in new business startup growth.
And with this agenda, Republicans think it's very broad. There's not very many details. Take for the fact Inspector General office, not sure how much it's going to cost. Walker said this proposal is a distraction from his support to raise taxes. Your response to that?
Well, that's not the case. I mean, you look at the Republicans, they got rid of Government Accountability Board. We are back to a partisan model, which does not offer, the same accountability as the nonpartisan Government Accountability Board did. So we've been taken backwards. They want to continue to take us backwards. We just want to get us back to a place where people can once again trust government. That is exactly what this Office of Inspector General should do. That is also what we should have been doing all along. We shouldn't have taken the steps backwards. Wisconsin was once a leader in accountability measures, especially after the caucus scandals of years past. We said that things cannot go on this way. We're going to fix them. We got to that point, and Republicans said, well, nope, we want to go back to where we were.
Now, your campaign, you're open to increasing some taxes. Can you elaborate on that? what taxes you want to raise. I know there's been this, Governor Walker has been going on this rhetoric that Tony Evers wants to raise the gas tax by $1 because he said at quote, I'm open to many ideas.
Right. So again, the governor's going to make up whatever he wants to make up because he's getting very desperate. But the fact is, we want to create a more fair and equitable tax structure. Should there be tax relief for middle, lower income households? Of course. The governor got rid of the earned income tax credit, effectively raising taxes on the lowest income individuals in this state. So let's not let the governor run away from his record on this issue. We want to make sure that people are paying their fair share. Large corporations who are sometimes getting away with very little tax burden, they have a responsibility to the state, and we want to make sure that that responsibility is met.
When it comes to fixing the roads, fixing the many problems that some say have been ignored for years, what is the solution? I mean,
they've definitely
everything
been ignored.
is on the table, as Tony Evers says, but what is it?
Absolutely. You take any road trip, you're going to know that the roads have actually absolutely been ignored. Raising the gas tax, is that an option? Of course. Is it $1? Of course not. That's just ridiculous. I mean, nobody's going to raise the gas tax $1, but we do have to find a way to make sure that we're funding our projects, also making sure that our transportation infrastructure is more equitable. We increase options for mass transit, meaning that people have a way to and from work who don't always just drive on the roads. And that's how we make Wisconsin a much more attractive state. We are bleeding talent. Our young professionals are leaving the state in droves. We want to make sure that Wisconsin's a place that's once again attractive for business, also just attractive for people, especially younger people. That we need to have in order to grow as a state.
Now, this agenda had just, a few items on it. I'm sure there's other things that you guys have if you are elected to office. One thing I do want to ask you is about term limits. Governor Walker said last week that if he is elected to the next term, it will be his last year. Any idea of where you stand on term limits, if the governor or even just lawmakers should have them?
Yeah, this is the thing about term limits. I mean, it's touch and go, right? Like there are pluses and minuses to term limits. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I mean, if that was the will of the people, if people took it to referendum and said we want our elected officials to have term limits, then fine, so be it. That is the will of the people of the state. I think that's a decision that should be left up to residents of Wisconsin.
And another big issue, student loan debt.
Oh, yeah.
I know some Democrats support refinancing student loans as an option. Any idea on what the solution or a next step if you guys are elected as the next governor, lieutenant governor, to fix the growing problem of what students have and how much debt they have?
So an overwhelming majority of Democrats in the legislature, if not all Democrats in the legislature, support a more fair system for student loan repayment. And that means refinancing student loan debt, higher ed, lower debt. That means that people should be able to refinance that debt the same way you would a mortgage, the same way you would a car note. It also means that we should be paying a much lower rate. I mean, you look at the rate that big banks get to borrow money. I think that if we were to be able to borrow money to further education, it would work wonders, work magic for our economy if we had more people with access to affordable higher education. And so the governor has had the opportunity to let people who are strapped with student loan debt, who aren't able to contribute to the economy, who are putting off life decisions like buying a car, buying a house, because they're still paying obscene amounts of money per month just because they decided that they wanted to better themselves, and that's a real problem.
What about the 2-year tuition freeze that's been in place? Do you think it's successful, or do you think there needs to find a way to pay for it?
Right. So you can't couple a tuition freeze with a $250 million cut to the UW system. You're going to bleed the entire system dry. So that's where the real problem is. The state has to be a player to make sure that higher education is more accessible and more affordable. Tuition freeze, of course, that's a part of the conversation, but you can't do that with massive cuts to the entire system because we won't be able to fund programs. That's why you see schools across the state who are, where their programs are being cut in the humanities, school like Oshkosh getting rid of men's soccer, men's tennis, and those are programs that funded themselves.
And what you said at a forum I want to bring up about Trump voters. You said at a forum in September that you're not interested in Trump voters who switched from Obama in 2016 to Trump. Do you want to clarify your statements there? I know Republicans have attacked you in a way where it seems like you don't want those voters at all. You're not interested in them having support for you.
Well, absolutely. If you look at where we are in this country, voters who are still with Donald Trump that may have switched from Barack Obama, it will be very difficult for us to get those voters back. The point that is always underreported is that I said we need the Obama no-show voters, people who voted in 2008 or 2012, but not 2016, because they felt left behind. They didn't feel like there was anyone fighting for them. And I want people to know that on this ticket, in this campaign, you have candidates who are going to be champions for healthcare, for education, for improving our environment, and overall improving our economy. And we need to get that message out to as many people who have been left behind by the system as possible. For all the people who felt like government has not been there for them, or has not worked for them, we want them to know that we are there for you.
All right, perfect. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining me. All right. Coming up, Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation and sparking protests in Wisconsin and Washington. We talked to one group who discusses the impact on survivors of sexual assault.